Hi guys, I'm Ryan Houston and welcome to my fly tying channel. This channel contains hundreds of different videos covering all manner of different patterns, techniques and styles of fly tying. There's something here to suit almost everybody, so hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, let's get on with the show. Hi guys, so in the next series of 4 videos what we're going to tie is Carrie Stevens' Grey Ghost. So it's a fairly complicated streamer, and I've tried to do it in more detail than possibly a single video. So we're going to have 4 videos on this and take you through the different stages of tying, from the body to the bellies to the wing supports to the actual wing itself. So stay tuned, check out all 4 videos, and hopefully it'll help you along the way to tie your own classic streamer fly. Hi guys, welcome back to part 4 of tying Carrie Stevens' Grey Ghost. I know it's a little bit drawn out, but I think the fly itself is one of the more complicated streamer type flies, and I think it's easier just to compartmentalize it, cut it into sections. So at this point we're going to create our wings themselves. So what do we use for that? I suppose traditionally, and you'd use something like strung hackle for it, and a lot of people use like strung hackle or saddle type hackle for it. What qualities are we looking for in our hackles? So if we go for something that's like a saddle type hackle, obviously for this fly it's going to be grey, but we're doing this for purposes of demonstration. So if we take this feather is a nice taper to it, but it has very little strength, and so when it's tied on it would just hang. And if you were to fish this, then it's probably more inclined to tangle, although it probably has more motion, more movement. So this is probably not suitable. So then we go on to, you can use slapping, you can use whatever. Again, it's a balance of the strength of the hackle and the shape that we're trying to get. My own preference is that I like them to have quite a bit of taper, and I probably tie my wings a little bit longer than what some people would. So my own personal preference is to take an actual neck cape, and then I would be looking for these sort of feathers at the back end of it. But again, each cape has its own characteristics. This one's quite thin and tapered, but it is the one I'm actually going to use to tie this fly, and as we can see it has that little bit of droop in it, a bit of hold, but it also has, when we generally these things are paired, so when we get 2 together and when you glue the stalks at the front, you do get that bit more support, so that'll hold it up. Sometimes what you actually have to think of is when I turn it upside down, it might have less droop going the other way, and you may want to utilize the feather that. So just because it comes off one side of the cape doesn't mean that that's the side of the fly that's going on. Pick it as it suits the fly itself. So that's sort of genetic type neck cape, but you could just as easily use little cheapo Indian type cape. And in some cases these can have a rounder tip and maybe suit the fly. Although this end of it here, I find the shape is often not what I'm after. But when we pick our feather, we're going to pick it for length, and generally the sort of standard would be that it's a little bit longer than this. My own preference is to have it quite a bit longer, perhaps more than what would be usual. So when we're doing this, you would take 2 feathers, and I would match them up for their tips, and then set them against our fly and choose the length, and then I would hold the 2 together and strip the bases off them. Okay, so then we have our 2 feathers that are going to sit together. The other thing is these have a bit of curve into it, so they're going to get it tight to sit together. So you ideally a flat feather, but if there is a bit of curve to it, you can just use your nails and just pinch those, fold them out and straighten the thing so that they will lie nice and tight. And now to construct the wing itself. So I have the two that I'm actually going to use to tie the fly off the side here, but we are going to show you what we do here. So Carrie glued these things together. So you can use varnish. So I'd use a clear varnish if I was going to do that. So a fly tying varnish, and I'd probably let it thicken up a bit, or have a bottle that was open a while older to do that. You could use gel super glue. If you use running super glue, it'll just run all through the fibers and probably make a mess of it. But you could use gel super glue for it. But what I find to be very good is this, which is EvoStick Serious Glue. And I use this for putting my pike fly's eyes on, and I discovered that it's actually really good for this application here. So, how do you do this? So what we're going to do is you're going to lay your adhesive on this first section of the feather, probably about an inch or so. This is a biggish fly here. So if we take the cap off that, and then we take our feather and we just run a thin little run of glue along the rachis or stalk. And then if we take our other feather and match up the tips and get it to lay flat on top of that, and then just wet my finger so it doesn't stick, and I'm just going to gently squeeze that together. So I'm keeping the stalks in line, and you might be able to see that the glue just penetrates through the base of the fibers, but this glue here will not run, and therefore we can use it to stick these together and it won't destroy the feather. So you would then leave that to dry. And the other option then is, which a lot of people do, and which Carrie did, was to create the entire sides in one go. So personally, I prefer to stick the two feathers together and let that sit, and then I will add my cheeks and sides and stuff separately by tying them in. And I feel that gives me more control, especially if I'm tying a presentation type fly rather than a normal fishing fly. But each to their own. As said, if you want to go down the route of creating the whole thing in one go, then what you would do is take your sides as well, which are going to be, in this case, silver pheasant. Take your feather and then take the hackle construct that we already have, and then right up at the base here where we're going to tie this in, then I would just again run on a little bit of our glue. Set that up on top of it, get all in line, and again just pinch it together. So we have it at this stage, and if you want to take it the whole way, then you would also add on your jungle cock at this point as well. So you take your jungle cock feather, you either use a small one or you use part of a larger one. Same thing, strip that down a bit, strip off all the excess, take this part of the wing set, smaller bit of our glue, again just at the base, right on line with the stalk of the feather, and glue on the jungle cock to the center of that. And this is what we end up with. So the whole thing glued together. And when you do that, you can obviously set that aside to dry, and then that can literally be just plonked on the side of the fly and glued on. You obviously need to make a matching one for the other side, in which case you'd put one on there and one on the opposite side, tie it in, and then create your head. So that is a possibility, and that is probably the way they were originally done. But as I said, for tie-in presentation flies, my own preference is to tie it on stages. So I do stick together my hackles. So when we're going to put the feathers of the wing on, then we have to choose, are you going to go flat on the side? So you can just tie them in line, in which case the glued portion of the stems here does create a sort of a flat platform that allows you to stick it on. So you can just stick them straight on the side, on each side, like that, and just attach them on. Now, I tend to find that can be prone to rolling, and it does cover up more of your body, so it depends what you're going to do, but the feathers will all be in line if you do that. My own preference is generally to have them sitting more on top, and in that respect this little throaty bit that we tied here becomes like a fake part of the hackle. So we'd set that on, with the hackle stalks on top here. Just change the angle down, and when you do this, what you find then is that the feather will sort of ride up a bit more. It's more vertical, but it does allow you to see more of the back part of the body. You can use the stalks to just change the angle, and then you would take the other set and set it over here, match up the tips for length, and when you're happy with that, again it's going to be up on top here. Just put those stalks beside each other. And we'll push this over, you can see the 4 stalks lining up. Now it does, as I say, tend to sit up more, but that is my preference. If we want it to go down a bit, we can just pinch the stalks sort of to flatten them out and down a little bit, but we still want them to be tenting the feathers together. So hold them together and just tighten that up. And we always have to remember that we're trying to create a tapered head on this thing. So to me, that is the style and length that I like for them, although as I said, I probably am a little bit long in the feathers. So, but it's up to yourself. Any fibers that aren't going to play ball like that, then you would want to remove those. So for that, we can just hold the wing and use good tweezers and just take that out. So next we have these cheeks or sides, or whatever you want to call them. So generally it's going to be some sort of like a wide feather, like a duck flank, and in this case it's going to be a silver pheasant feather. So we have 2 options. We can either choose a feather from further down the back of the fly, or the bird, sorry, that is close to the size that we want, in which case what we do is we just peel off the fluffy bits, and then set that on the side, hold it in line, and just wrap back on it. We would want to be just wrapping onto the very start of the fibers here. And I said this is the sort of trade-off with this style, is that the plate feather is not in line with the stalk of these, and that is something that you have to sort of weigh up in your head. And then you would just take the other one and do the same thing, just strip it off and set it up on this side, pinch the 2 together, and then wrap back onto it. And you would want to be catching a few fibers that just sort of pulls this together at the top, and then we would add our jungle cock after that. So the other option for this is that we use a bigger feather. So if we use something like this, it's a stronger feather as well, more defined, but if we stick it on at full, I don't think it suits. So in this case, what you'd want to do is pull this back until you would then pull these back till you get a size that suits you. So when you're doing this, obviously you're going to have paired, so you have a left and a right. So what I would do here is I would put them together, slide them together until their tips match, and then I would pinch them together by the tips of the feathers, and then I would do this and slide them back, and in that way they're identical in size. And once you've got them to the size you want, then you can add those on. I would try and get that trimmed back until it was the appropriate matching size or angle to the wing and throat. Once we've got to that stage, say just set one to the side, peel this stuff off, set it up there and tie it on. Do the same on the other side. And said if you want, what you could actually do is to flatten the stalk, and that as well will help it to lay flatter. And because you've stripped them to the same size, if you just then tie them on, they will match, and you can just use the stalk then to change the alignment of it. Once you're happy with the alignment, pinch it in place and tighten down the wraps over the stems. Okay. I'm just going to hold all in place, and I'm just going to go back a little bit over because I want it to actually catch some of the fibers on the underneath and tighten them in on the throat of it. And next we want to put on jungle cock. So we can use a full length feather, but in general then you have to use quite a small one. Or what we can do is we can take matching larger feathers, one from each side of the cape, so that we get a little bit of curvature with it. Again, put the two together and just strip them back to the same length. And with jungle cock, if you use these enameled portions to tie in on, they're quite flat and it helps them to stay in line. So I'm just going to flip that over and I'm going to set that on, hold it in place and tie it in. Now my own preference there is that it is shorter than the plate feather here, or the silver pheasant. Just proportions wise, I think it looks better that way. And when you're happy with all, then just bind that down, and then it's time to start trimming off these feathers. So just take them each one at a time, just lift them up, fold that angle out, slide your scissors down onto it and trim it off. Same then with these main wing ones, I'm just flipping them up and trimming them off. And then I'm going to just hold all, and I'm going to wrap my black tie-in thread down towards towards the eye of the hook, and I'm trying to create a nice level taper. So head shape again is a personal preference. Some people like it very long and very thin. I probably like a little bit more taper in it, but it's up to yourself. So once I've created the black portion, then I'll just go back and forward to create that taper, obviously with more wraps at the back than at the front. And then I'll finish that off and trim it. And that is the fly tied apart from the red bar in the head. So this was a sort of trademark of Carrie's, but you could do it with varnish. But how I like to do this is to use a red tie-in thread. So I'll take some off, and I find it easier to do in my hand rather than using a bobbin. So what I want to do is get it started there, and then I'll trim this bit off nice and tight up to it, and then I just want to wrap a fine band of this right in the middle of the head, and then I just create a half hitch, lift it up directly in line with that, and then pinch and let that tighten down onto it. I'll just give it a couple of rocks there to hold it in position, and then put in another one, a couple of rocks, and just trim that off in there nice and neat. And it's time to varnish this and get it finished. So obviously you need to do a little bit of preening at it whenever you're done if you're going to frame it or whatever, but that's essentially the fly tied. So then we'll take a clear varnish and varnish the head of the fly. So you can use a variety of different varnishes to do this, but what I'd probably advise you to do first off is to use like a thin Celere clear to do this with. And I'm just going to take a needle and just coat that with the thin clear, and then just move the fly around. Adding more to it as we go. And then leave that aside to dry. And that'll obviously need more coats as we go along, just to build up a nice clean finish to it. So when all that is dried, etc., then I'll just sort of start preening the different aspects of it to get it in line as I like it before you would frame it. But that is our Carrie's grey ghost. As you see, whenever I flip it, the weight of it sort of takes this down, but if I'm going to frame this fly over time, it's going to sort of sag a little bit. So that is why my preference is to have the top or vertical wing set and then let it settle under its own weight. And once I get it sort of pushed down to there, then it'll sit. Whereas if I started at that position with a wing that didn't have as much strength on it, then it would likely settle a bit more. So that is Carrie Stevens Grey Ghost. Difficult fly, I suppose, but you can make it as hard or as easy as you want. As I said, you could have just glued the whole thing together and stuck those on the side. So hopefully you liked the video. If you did, check out all the other ones on the channel. Give us a like, subscribe, and until next time, tight lines. Thanks for watching.